Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is John Newlay. I work for WellSpan Phil Haven in lovely Mount Gretna, Pennsylvania. And we're here to give you a little education today on healthy farms and healthy minds. I have my co-trainer here with me, Miss Jane Miller, and I will let her introduce herself.
Hello, I am happy to be here. We come to you under the request of Pennsylvania Farm Link, and one of the things that we have going on is we actually are a part of WellSpan Phil Haven, which is located in farming community. So we're happy to make this link with you.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about healthy farms, healthy minds, and connecting Pennsylvania's farmers to good brain health. So what does that mean? So let's kind of go through this a little bit. Your brain, believe it or not, needs the same vigilant attention you give your farm. Our farms, as we know, thrive better when we also pay attention to our mental health. And mental health is something that a lot of times we don't always pay as much attention to, or we're afraid to talk about. But we want to get people a little more comfortable with this topic because it is very relevant. And we do find if we're paying attention and taking care of our mental health, a lot of times it's going to affect all those different aspects within our lives, including our farms.
Absolutely.
So we know the signs of a healthy farm, and this is by no means an all-inclusive list. I'm sure there's lots of things on this list that you could easily add, but for the most part, we know if we have nutrition-rich soil, our crops are thriving, we're having good yield, there's no sign of disease or infestation, our livestock are healthy. Generally, pretty good signs of a healthy farm, and include any of those other things you might have been thinking about under that. So if we had signs of trouble on our farm, we would likely respond to that, right? So if our crops weren't producing, we would want to find out, why is that happening? If our livestock weren't thriving, what's going on there? What's potentially causing that? Is it something that we could respond to and potentially fix?
Right.
And the reality is sometimes there's challenges that just happen as a result of things entirely out of our control. Weather, one of the biggest factors that we don't have a lot of control over, right? Or sometimes there's pest infestation, disease, market changes. I know farmers are particularly susceptible to this, and just any kind of loss that just comes up sometimes out of nowhere, right? A big piece of equipment breaks down, or something you really weren't expecting to happen, that can really kind of throw a wrench into things.
Yeah. And I think, when we think of things happening out of our control, this in any field you're in, these are things that kind of rock a person's boat, because, we like to be able to count on things going smoothly. And there are so many things that can happen to us that had nothing to do with our choices.
Yeah. And sometimes things do go smoothly. I mean, I think all of our lives are like that. We have periods in our lives that everything's going relatively well.
Right.
And then sometimes when it really starts to rain, it pours. And then when one thing goes wrong, there's a lot of things going wrong. So we want you to kind of get used to that concept that, our brains are kind of a lot like our farms. And I found this interesting little sketch here that was done of the anatomy of a farmer's brain, which I just thought was great. And, and just, all the different things that are going on there, and things that you want to tend to from time to time, right? So our brain, your brain, needs the same vigilant attention that you give your farm. There are times where sometimes we might be taking better care of our pastures, our livestock, our equipment, and we're not really, we might be neglecting ourselves a little bit here. And so we want to kind of make sure that there's a healthy balance there between those two things. Our farms ultimately will thrive better when we're also paying attention to our mental health.
Yeah.
And,
Oh my.
and again, this is something where mental health is something that we at Wellspan Philhaven, and there's been a large push nationwide to try to get people more comfortable with this, with reducing stigma, to get people to realize that, mental health conditions, mental health challenges are very, very common.
Mm.
The fact that almost 50% of us in the United States over the course of our lives will be diagnosed with some kind of mental health condition. So we want to get people more comfortable with that, because the flip side of that is these are all very treatable. Just like if you had a problem on your farm, if you have something that's going on with your mind, because the brain's an organ, just like any other organ, your heart, your liver, your lungs, sometimes they don't always function perfectly, 365 days a year for your entire life. And that's okay. It doesn't, it just means you're human, because all mental health is treatable. And the vast majority of people that do get treatment for mental health get better. They get well. So we want you to become a little more comfortable with the term mental health, and paying attention to our mental health and how that can relate a lot to our farms.
Yeah, just correlate that to farm health. Mental health takes it needs our attention, just like farm health needs our attention, just like my work health needs my attention. And we can't go anywhere really in understanding this until we understand what good mental health looks like, right, John? We have to know that first.
Exactly. So what does good mental health look like? Well, our relationships are going to be fruitful. They're going to be healthy. Those relationships, not only with our spouse, but also our family, maybe our other farmers that are working with us in the area. So those relationships are fruitful.
Yeah.
They're beneficial.
Doesn't mean they always go smooth. It just means that they're thriving, and that we're deriving joy in those relationships. I mean, maybe one is taxed and the other ones are okay, but it doesn't mean like it's always smooth sailing. It just means that for the most part, we have fruitful relationships in our life.
Sure, because there's going to be ups and downs in anybody's relationship.
Right.
I think that comes without saying. For the most part, we're able to cope with those little challenges that come up. And these are things that happen in everybody's life, that, little things that happen that may create a little bit of anxiety and strain, but that's, it's okay. If we have good mental health, we're usually able to cope with those things. We're able to kind of, look at them, address them, and make adjustments as necessary to get beyond those challenges. We're taking care of our physical health, right? And this could be things like even just good nutrition.
Right.
We're eating the right things, and we're just kind of making sure that overall we're doing things that are going to protect our physical health.
Yeah, it may mean going to the doctor when we see something show up that needs attention physically.
Yep, and maybe just staying on top of if a yearly physical, those things, those
Right.
kind of things, just taking care of those things, because
Right.
you have to take care of those things, especially as we age. Being able to manage our time efficiently and effectively, and I think this is likely something that can be challenging, because we live in farm country here in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, and I see a lot of farmers out late.
Oh my. Yeah, I actually live on farm property, and I always think, oh my goodness, this is a huge, huge job.
I think it's sometimes not because they want to be out there, but because they have to be out there. So sometimes this can be a difficult one to get that healthy balance, and to try to make sure that we're managing our time to the best of our ability, and realizing that there's going to be some periods during the year when that's going to be harder to achieve, and some periods of the year where it might be a little easier to achieve. But good time management, and overall just a relatively healthy work-life balance. And again, this might look a little different for some farmers, just depending I mean, there's some farmers that do this full time. There's some that are kind of doing this part time, and then they have another job, that they do on the side. So it's trying to find a relatively healthy balance between all that.
Yep.
We have good problem solving and decision making skills, right? Uh, and overall, and Jane had mentioned this earlier, just a kind of a sense of joy and hope, right? We're kind of, most mornings we're looking forward to getting up out of bed and approaching the day and, seeing what that day is going to bring. But overall, we have a general sense of joy and a general sense of hope in our lives. So that's what good mental health looks like. What about some areas of concern, or when might we want to start reevaluating or thinking, things might not be going entirely the way they should? So we're going to look at some signs of concern.
And remember that just like things on the farm aren't always, our fault, when our mental health declines, it isn't always our fault. It could be things that are happening that we have no control over, other than to recognize we need to seek some treatment. That's all.
So these can be just some general signs and symptoms that tend to show up in most individuals as areas of their mental health start to decline.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind that sometimes these signs and symptoms can be mild, moderate, or severe. If you're having a little bit of trouble concentrating, it might be more on the mild side. But there are some severe cases where it can be hard to just remember what happened 20 minutes ago. Your short-term memory, your thoughts are just racing. You can't shut your brain off, and that would be a little more of an indicator that of maybe I need to be doing a little more here to address this. So difficulty concentrating, sleep and appetite are two things in two areas that very frequently become impacted when mental health starts to decline. So, and both of these can go in either direction. So sometimes people eat more as kind of a means to cope. But sometimes what happens is they just lose their appetite. Right. Appetite kind of goes away. And
they don't taste good. They don't smell good. It's just, yeah.
Yep. So the sleep goes down. You're used to sleeping maybe 6-7 hours a night, and then that goes down to 5 hours, and then that might go down to 3 to 4 hours, and sometimes less. And I think anybody knows that really doesn't get a good night's sleep for a period of days or weeks. It can really make you miserable.
Or with sleep, it could be that it's difficult for you to fall asleep, or you keep waking up, and then it's hard to get back to sleep. So that lack of good rest really does a toll on us.
Yep. Appetite's the same way. Sometimes people eat more to kind of cope, and sometimes the appetite just kind of goes away, and they might even lose some weight as a result of that. And if you're not sure, well, a lot of times, I would always ask people, hey, do your clothes feel a little looser than they normally would?
Yeah.
If they do, then the chances are that your appetite's gone down. You've dropped a couple pounds. Energy, usually a decrease in energy. So energy goes down, as does motivation. You're not motivated to do things, or you just kind of have lost interest in things that you normally like to do. But now suddenly, not so much interested in that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people report I feel dull. I don't feel invested in anything anymore.
Right. Agitation might go up. Anger, nervousness. I mean, you might snap at people inadvertently when normally that's kind of not the type of person you normally are. And you might just feel like you're a burden to others around you. Be that your family, your kids, your whatever, your community. Just feelings of being a burden.
And sometimes that comes from all these other things going on that you just start to feel like I just can't get on top of this like I normally can. And so everybody else is paying a price for me not being able to kind of get past this hump.
Exactly. Loss of joy and hope, right? So signs of good mental health was having joy and hope. Signs of concern obviously would be not having joy
Right.
and hope. We're losing that joy and hope. You're not excited about getting out of bed every day, and that starts to decline.
Yeah.
And also sometimes feelings that you're just trapped, and and that could be just a lot of different things. I mean, it could be for some people, just they're under a tremendous amount of financial burden, and they feel trapped. That they don't see any way that they're going to be able to climb out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be an area of concern, especially as if it starts really perseverating into all those areas of your life where you're just feeling like you're not going to be able to get out. Other signs of concern: sometimes engaging in reckless or risky activities, addiction issues. Probably the biggest one I would worry about is alcohol. And not to say alcohol is necessarily a bad thing when used in moderation, but just sort of pay attention to, if your intake is going up, pay attention to that. This is another big one that we tend to see where people start to pull back.
Mm-hmm.
And they just start to withdraw from others, isolate from others. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you're hauled up in your room, but it could be that, you're, for example, normally used to grabbing a cup of coffee, with some of the guys every morning down at the local diner. And now you're finding, I don't really want to do that. You're sort of withdrawing from that.
Or even, not answering calls the way you normally would, or getting back to people, and, just feeling like you don't have that energy to be in those conversations. It could be withdrawing emotionally.
Yeah, it's like it's draining you.
Mm-hmm.
In worst case scenario, just thoughts of giving up.
Yeah.
Where I don't think I can do this anymore. I'm done. So pay attention to those thoughts, and these are all general areas of concern.
Yeah. Sometimes things show up physically too, aches and pains in the body that are unexplained, or, like headaches or muscle pain and joint pain. Even these could be indicators that there's the onset of some mental health challenges, because, we're a whole body, and things show up across our body when something's going wrong physically. Sometimes that can impact our mental health. When our mental health is being impacted, it can cause problems in the body as well, kind of a shutdown in areas.
Yep. So if we're seeing some of these things, or a number of those, right? You don't have to have every one of those areas of concern. Sometimes it might just be 2 or 3, sometimes more. But if you're starting to see those things, you might be asking, well, what can I do? What can I do about this? How can I help myself? Or maybe you're noticing this in one of your fellow friends, family members, or farmers.
Yeah.
Maybe you're seeing some of these signs, and you want to potentially help that person. What can we do? So
this belongs to our farming community. This acronym, it belongs to you. And this is the go-to.
So remember FARM: facing facts, accessing help, recovering, and then mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll break down each one of these as to kind of what they mean. So let's start with the first one, facing facts. So first of all, has there been a change? Some of those indicators of concern that we showed you earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If your friends or loved ones have maybe expressed a concern to you about some things that they're seeing in you, listen to them. A lot of times what happens with mental health is that it sets in very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the person that is experiencing it, they don't always see that something is changing within them. Sometimes it's other people around them that are noticing some of those changes.
Right.
And so if they point those out to you, listen to them. They're doing that because they care about you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Try to not be defensive. It's hard because if we're not seeing those things and somebody is maybe making statements, I may feel like, well, that's unfair. But try to take a couple steps back in your private moments and think about, have people that I loved express concern.
right. Try to be open and objective.
Yeah.
If any of those symptoms that we talked about earlier exist, it probably means there might be something going on, and that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's not a sign of weakness.
Yeah. We went throughout our farm because we had some challenges for a while. And it's the same thing here. We wouldn't throw our brain away and count it as a loss if we have some challenges. It's the same thing. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to let things go and stay there any more than it would be okay to let disease progress in our farms or any of the things that we talked about that are challenges on the farm.
Absolutely. So not a sign of weakness. It's more a show of strength.
Absolutely. Yep.
This second step potentially could be the hardest step of all of them. First of all, recognizing that there's an issue, but second is accessing help. And sometimes this is really hard to do, not just for farmers, but for everybody. This is a hard step to just, take that first foot forward and say, I'm going to get some help here because I don't want to feel this way, right? I don't want to feel this way anymore. That telling that trusted person that you want help, and that trusted person could be, it could be a friend, it could be your spouse, it could be, another family member, cousin, whoever, but explore different options.
Right.
Try to devote a small amount of time each day to getting better. And that's going to look differently for each person because we're all very different human beings. And there's different things that are going to work. Some things are going to work for some people that aren't going to work for others, but be persistent and don't give up. It sometimes takes a few tries to get the right, what I call combination of things that's going to work. And so sometimes, you try that combination on the lock and the first time it just doesn't open up. And that's okay. It might take you a few more times before you get that right combination of things that are going to work, that are going to open up that lock, that are going to allow you to start to return back to a sense of normalcy and to try to get some of that joy and hope back in your life.
Oh yeah, because once this step is taken, the recovery process can begin, and then the momentum starts to build. Some of those things start to happen that have been lost. You recover.
So that's a really key point to point out here that Jane just mentioned is that recovery, not only is it possible, but it's very probable. The vast majority of people get well. It's recognizing that there's something going on and then getting them into treatment. And you might have to get the right combination of things, but when you do, most people get better.
Oh yeah.
They get better. And things, might take a little bit of time. It's not as simple as taking a couple acetaminophen and then with a headache and then 2 hours later I feel better. This might take a little bit, a few weeks, maybe a month, but people do get better. So your life is going to start to become more manageable, and those pastures of the brain, so to speak, will begin to thrive again. So
big time. Yep. And I love this. Were you going to talk about this, John, with the last statement here? Because John and I always go to this statement because it's so true.
Yeah, it really, with any mental health condition, usually what we look at to make it simple is, well, really, how much is the way that I've been feeling now or over the last few weeks or months, how much is it impacting my ability to live, laugh, love, learn, and labor or work, right? How much is it impacting that? If it's, mild, is it moderate, is it severe? But it's an indicator that
Mhm.
something's going on, and also to note that you can get better from this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When John and I have heard back from people that, they'll make statements like, I didn't realize that I was just existing. And oh my goodness, I feel so much better. I mean, things smell good again. They taste good. The sky is blue. I didn't realize how blue the sky. Those kind of statements, you know, make it so real for us how important it is to recover, how important it is to come back to life.
Yep. So stay invested, right? Don't give up
Don't give
here.
up.
Takes a little bit of time, but people
Mhm.
do get well.
Absolutely.
And when you do,
Mhm.
because you very likely will,
Mhm.
reach out.
Yeah.
Reach out to your fellow farmers that might be struggling. You guys have one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most difficult jobs out there. It can be rewarding in many ways, but it's not easy sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't completely get that because I'm not a farmer, but I can respect that, seeing what you all do
For sure.
on a day-to-day basis. And I'm probably only just seeing what scratches the surface, and that even looks difficult to me. So I have a lot of respect for your
Mhm.
all's community, what you guys do. But once you are recovering and you're doing well, reach out, because there's
Yes.
probably likely other people that are feeling down and struggling as well. And I think it's letting those folks know that, hey, there's help out there. And especially it can be, what's the word I'm looking for, Jane? So if somebody's gone through this themselves and then they're able to help others, I think it's going to go over a lot better with your fellow
Oh
farmers.
my goodness, absolutely, because you can speak from experience, the recovery process, and you're that peer mentor, um, for someone. Nothing like firsthand experience of what it was like to be somewhere that didn't feel good, and then what it's like to be somewhere that feels so much better. That's the hope then that we can give someone else.
If by chance it has gone to the point where you suspect somebody might be having thoughts of suicide or ending their life, uh, that's um, that's an exception where you want to get help right away.
Yeah, for
Uh,
yourself as well. I mean, if you're listening to this right now and you have had suicidal thoughts or you're having suicidal thoughts, get help. Help is available. Suicidal thoughts are fairly common, actually, and um, but we don't need to take that step. We can get help. There are other options. Um, and if John and I could tell you how many people we talk to, or even people that were right there and made a different choice to explore some other options for healing and hope and recovery and wellness, that came back to us and said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize how far down that road I was, and I'm so thankful to be alive today." Hope and help are available.
Absolutely. So your resources, obviously, for an emergency, there's always 911. Non-emergency help, 211 is sort of an informational line
Mhm.
where you can get information on different services that are out there. There is always the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which you
Mhm.
can see the number provided there. For the younger generation, they tend to prefer the National Crisis Text Line. So if you text help or anything to 741-741, a crisis counselor will text you back. And hey, something to note here too, you don't have to be the person in crisis to use a crisis line or your local crisis intervention service. You might just have a question about something, and that's okay. Those numbers are readily accessible
Mhm,
online, and
mhm.
every county has a local crisis intervention office in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and actually, here's a good time to say that. Take some time after listening to this video today. Take some time to find out what your local crisis number is, because different counties have different numbers, and that might be a good resource for you to have in your phone. Your local crisis number. Um, but all of these that John listed so far are 24/7. So any time of the day you can make these calls or text to the 741-741, and there will be someone available to you.
Um, for our plain communities folks, there is the Green Pastures, which is located at Phil Haven. That might not be a 24-hour a day, 24/7 phone number, but they will
They
get
will.
back to you
Mhm.
promptly.
And that's
Uh,
for the plain community
yep.
specifically. Hmm.
Those last two there are just good informational resource. So NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, has a lot of great information just in educational materials on a lot of the different mental health diagnoses out there, and also some things that you can do to help somebody that might be struggling, or if you have a family member that might be struggling.
Yeah.
And Prevent Suicide Pennsylvania, that last one down there, is also a good resource to help prevent suicide,
Mhm.
which is the 10th leading cause of death in our country, by the way. So that's a number we want to get going in the other direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you can see there some of the different people that sponsored this. Obviously, PA Farm Link, Northeast Extension Risk Management Education, and the USDA. And on behalf of WellSpan Phil Haven, I want to thank you for spending a couple minutes with us today, and hopefully you have a little bit better education as to mental health, being a little more comfortable with it, and also not being afraid to reach out if you feel yourself or somebody else might be struggling.
Absolutely. And if you would like to get in touch with one of us, you can do that through PA Farm Link, um, or WellSpan Phil Haven. We are both employed with WellSpan, and quite frankly, we are very passionate about ongoing dialogue and learning from you as well. If there's something that you feel would be good for us to incorporate in future videos or future trainings, please give us your input. We're all about learning more and giving the best possible information to our community.
Okay, thank you all. Have a good
Thank you.
day.
Thank you.